Welcome to this synthesizer tutorial. Please turn to face the modules. You will notice the keyboard on your left. This won't work yet as the modules are not yet hooked up. As for the modules themselves, starting with the oscillator section on the left and moving to the amplifier on the right, all modules are in line and for the purposes of this tutorial must be connected as such. On a synthesizer, to connect modules, you have cables called jack leads. In every output of every module in front of you, there is a jack ready for you to take and put into the input of another module. You might be wondering why there are so many more in the oscillator section than anywhere else. This is because all of the oscillator wave types are outputs, and you get to select which one you want to play with. The oscillator section, the big yellow module on the left, is itself split into two sections, oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. Each of these oscillators have the same waveforms: noise, square and sine. A synthesizer may have multiple oscillators to play around with, but notice that most of the other modules only have one input. This is where the mixer comes in. The mixer, the green module just to the right of the oscillator module, has two inputs and one output. The two inputs are clearly labelled oscillator 1 and oscillator 2, and the output has a jack waiting for us to take, but we'll get to that later. Now listen up because I want you to follow along. To get more than one oscillator sounding at the end point, grab the oscillator 1 sine from the yellow oscillator module, and that's the bottom jack from the column on the left, the column labelled oscillator 1, and put it into the leftmost input on the mixer. That's the input on the mixer labelled oscillator 1 input. Great. Now pick up the jack labelled square. Mixer labelled oscillator 1 input. Great. Now pick up the jack labelled square from the oscillator 2 section of the yellow module, that's the row on the right, and put it into the right input of the green mixer module, the one labelled oscillator 2 input. Well done. Now we're ready to move on through the modules. The filter is named as such because it filters the higher frequencies out of a sound. Where the dial is sets the cutoff point. You'll be able to mess around with it and hear its effect once we're done connecting the modules. Take the output from the right hand side of the green mixer module, it's labelled as the output for you, and put it into the input of the filter, which is the pink coloured module with a large dial on the front. Now we're ready to move on to the ADSR. This will be the most new terms for you to remember, and it is common to all synthesizers. This creates the envelope for your sound, meaning when you press a note on the keyboard, the shape that the sound follows, the way that it rises and falls, that's all sculpted here. There is a visualization of the pattern the sound takes on the front of the ADSR. The controls are attack, decay, sustain and release. The attack refers to the start of the sound. It's how quickly, when a note is pressed, the sound rises from 0 volume to full volume. The decay comes next, which is how long the sound then takes to rest from full volume to the sustain level. Now, onto the sustain level. It is the odd one out of the ADSR section, because it's the only control here that pertains to a volume level instead of time. It simply sets the volume of the note, When you hold the note, the sustain level says how loud it will be when held. After you let go of the key on the keyboard, the release will dictate the time it takes to get from the sustain level back down to 0 volume. In other words, it's the tail of the sound. To engage the ADSR, grab the jack from the output of the filter and put it into the input of the ADSR. We're almost ready to play, but still we will get no sound. All of the modules necessary for the synthesizer to work properly are already connected, but there is one last module that connects the synthesizer to the speakers, and that's called the amplifier. Take the output jack from the ADSR and put it into the amplifier input. That's right. Now, you need to go back a few modules to the mixer. That's right. Now, you need to go back a few modules to the mixer to set the volume. To test the keys, you have a button that will play a note on your left motion controller. So with your left thumb, feel the two buttons, one above the other. The bottom one you can use to teleport around the map, and the top one plays a note on the keyboard. Plays a note on the keyboard. This will allow you to repeatedly press that button to test whether you have sound. Do this while grabbing and turning the mixer 1 dial with your right hand until you have sound. Once you do, set the second mixer dial to roughly the same place and check you can hear them both. Now you can head over to the keyboard and play some keys. Great, now you have. Great, now you have sound. So one last thing, there is a note hold selector next to this keyboard. When you press that and it goes green, it means that it's on. This means that when you press a note on the keyboard in front of you, it will keep that note held for as long as you have set it to be held for. And bear in mind that this is dictated at the ADSR stage, if you remember your training. Now you're ready to go and fiddle around with all the knobs and dials and get used to what they all do by listening to them, and then coming back to the keyboard and having a play. Enjoy!